Hello, hello. Welcome to another creative chat. So today I have Rachel with me. She is a brand designer. She won awards with her designs. She is also a photographer, and she's spoken on stages across the UK. And she is chronically ill, and we will talk about that a little bit too, as she loves to show people what you can do when you're chronically ill. So welcome, Rachel.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Hi, you're welcome. I'm glad to have you on here.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's going to be
So,
exciting.
yeah, definitely. So, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I am a brand designer turned creative mentor, and I just love branding and everything that sort of comes with that. But I feel like in the last few years, my work has sort of deepened in itself as well. So it's a lot more about embracing who you are, which I think has come from that chronic illness background of mine as well, because I was chronically ill before I started my business as well. And so it's always been kind of woven through, but I feel like now it's even more kind of, for me, it's not just about branding, it's about alignment and even like designing with the seasons and, figuring out like what season of business you're in and being inspired by nature and all of that sort of stuff feeds into what I love to do. And yeah, like you said, I've been running my business for 10 years now, just over. And in that time, I've like published a book with a publisher, self-published one as well, that's no longer around. It needs a lot of improvement, as does things that we all do, I think, over the years. And yeah, I love photography as well. That's been a huge like passion of mine since before I started my business. And yeah, I've been lucky enough to sort of been able to weave that into everything I do as well. So yeah.
I love that you said like design with the seasons and with
Yeah.
your nature, but because I feel like we're going into a decade or longer, I hope longer, that where we're more in tune with ourselves and like the
Yeah.
brands are more in tune with ourselves instead of just something you create
Yeah.
completely outside of who you are, and especially if you're an entrepreneur and it's you as a brand.
Yeah. Definitely. And I think as well, like for me, my brand, I've never been able to put it into words like what my branding process is like. And I realized recently, like I sort of, as you can tell, I love my plants, I love nature. Even as a photographer, everything I've always sort of been drawn to. Like some people love to take photos of people. Like for me, it's nature and landscapes and flowers and all of that sort of stuff. So I've always been drawn to it. And I realized kind of the way that I think about things is almost as if it's like a brand ecosystem. And like every single thing feeds into another one. And when one thing kind of falls out of harmony with the other, it can impact everything. And that's where I've kind of come to sort of understand my process as well. And yeah, I'm just obsessed with nature and looking at, seasonality in terms of there are seasons, of course, of nature. There's spring, summer, autumn, winter, or fall if you're in America. And there's so many different ways that we can look at that and interpret it for our businesses and our work as well, I think. So it's not just about what season are we in specifically and are we going to follow the seasons exactly, but it's more about figuring out what season of business are we in for ourselves now, like personally and in business, and how can we sort of work with that and go with the flow of nature and seasons in that way, but with our work, and how can we kind of go with that flow and kind of, yeah, just like, I don't know, it's really hard for me to put into words sometimes, but it's something that just feels really natural rather than forcing everything and trying to push constantly, which I think is that narrative we've had for so many years. But then like you said, when we've kind of started leaning into more of like what makes us happy and what do we love to do and how can we put more of ourselves into our brands and our businesses, and sort of letting that trickle through. And that's where I feel like my sweet spot has kind of landed. And I'm still working through things myself as well, which I think is the beauty of that kind of process. Like we're never kind of done. We're always growing. We're always figuring out new ways of supporting our brand ecosystem and going from there. So
Yeah, I love that you talk about the brand ecosystem. It's something I talk about too, but in completely different terms. So that's interesting.
yes, exactly.
Because I call it puzzle pieces.
Oh, I love that.
But it's the same thing. Like if you need all your puzzle pieces and you need them to fit together, and if there's a puzzle piece missing or it's in the wrong place, and it doesn't flow really well, and you can't get your puzzle completely finished, and it just feels that there's something
Exactly.
missing.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
love that as well, because I feel like there's so many, like they always say, don't they? There's no original idea anymore. But at the same time, we all have our own interpretations because, and that's what I love about branding. Like for me, it's not about creating something that is unique anymore, but it's about creating something that's unique to you because you are unique. Like no one has your unique set of lived experiences and past experiences and all of the stuff that shaped you to become who you are. And I just love that even though we can all have similar lines of thought and similar messaging, it all comes about in our own unique way. And that's like for me, nature. The second I started leaning into the nature inspired like brand messaging, so like I've got a course called Get Rooted, and that's all about for me like creating the brand roots, which are the brand foundations of your business. And so it's the same sort of thing we've seen before, but with my sort of spin on it and my take on it. And yeah, I just love that because I always think there's room for everybody in online business, and that's because we're all so beautifully unique, just like nature. No, even one plant. Like I did an Instagram reel last year because like reels are so far out of my comfort zone, it's untrue. And doing video and all of that sort of stuff, I'm like, no. But I walked out into my garden and I was trying to promote this workshop I was doing called Blossom, and I was like, I'm sure I'll be able to think of something. Like I'll go outside, everything's blossoming, I'll get an idea. And there were like this, my favorite rose bush, and there were two roses on it that were just blooming in completely different ways, and they were just at different stages of that blossom. And so it's like that gave me this whole kind of, you know, inspired kind of blossom inspired messaging that I could come up with for that workshop. And so for me, yeah, I think there's room for everybody, but we can also take such inspiration from our own journeys and our own experiences and just going out in the garden and looking at roses. So
Yeah, and it's true. Like you can't compare yourself to someone else, even if that person is it has been in business for just as long as you have been or shorter, and you think, oh, if they are that far, then I should be here. It's like it's not the same thing. And I think especially if you're in business longer, you probably shift a few times, and then it's really hard to start comparing yourself because people shift at different moments and they do different things, and there's so many elements that come into who you are and who you are with your business that it like you have to just stay with that and work from that. And if you start comparing, it's not even actually possible. You just think that you're comparing.
you know, I think that's something I've needed to hear as well, because I've been falling into that comparison trap so much recently. Because I think as well, when you're doing new things, like for me, I've always focused on like the services side of my business. And it's only in the past like year and a half. I mean, time has merged in the last few years, as we know, but maybe probably like 2.5 years. But it's not been a real focus until the last 6 months to a year, where I'm bringing in like digital products and that kind of side to my business. And it's so easy to look at other people. Like I've been doing it just as recently as last week, where I was comparing myself to another designer slash mentor who does similar things to me, but seems to be further on in certain aspects. And I think as well, like we never really know, going back to the nature analogies of everything, like we never know what's going on beneath the surface. And that's where for me that whole seasonality of everything comes in as well. And that's where I find it really helps me when I do start comparing, because I can just think, well, I'm not in their season right now. I'm not in the same season as them. Like I'm in a season of doing a lot of stuff behind the underneath the surface, and without kind of trying to compare myself too much, I can realize that I'm on my own path. I'm doing my own thing, and I might not be in the same season as them, but I can still be inspired by what they're doing, and it shows me what's possible. And so I've been trying to reframe a lot of that. But yeah, thank you for that as well, because I feel like that's something, you know, I need to hear, but other people I'm sure will as well.
And I think no matter how long you've been in business, there's always things where you're unsure about yourself. And
Yeah.
because like I've been in business, gosh, 13 years. Yeah.
Wow,
13
congrats.
years. 12 and a half. Yeah. So it's, and I still have it. And I, like you, I had a few products, but I'm focusing more on products, and that brings its own new challenges and things to figure out, and then you feel kind of new again in some ways.
100%.
I think if we're plants, then we're like how do you call it, like when a small version of a plant
like,
comes
yeah, like the seedling and the sprout, exactly. Yeah, well, like that's the thing as well, I think, in business, like you're always going to go through that cycle. And so you're never just going to suddenly kind of start as the seed and then sprout and then grow and then blossom and then you're done. Like you can blossom again and again and again. And you go through that cycle every time, like you say, I think you do something new and something that's not even new to you, but is like a new phase or a new evolution of what you want to do. And I know that's definitely true for me in the way that I've been sort of approaching everything, and it feels like there's so much happening at once but also not, and so it's kind of like trying to find that balance. And I think it's so easy to fall into things like comparing yourself to other people, and I know that that's my thing. That's the one of the bad habits that I sort of, you know, slink into when I get a bit more like, what's going on. But I think just taking the time and just recognizing like where you are and what you have done. And it's so easy to say that because I know when you're in the thick of it, you're just like crying and you've had enough and you're like, I should just pack it all in and I should just like not run a business anymore. And then the next morning you're like, what on earth was wrong with me? Like, of course I want to do this. And you kind of figure out your why again and, you know, pick yourself up and carry on. But we've all been there, and it happens like I say, it feels to me like it's a weekly occurrence at the minute. But I think it's just, you know, one of those things that will happen, and just finding little ways you can work your way out of it, I think, as well.
I think, like you're saying, if there's a lot going on at the same time, I think it's worse. I've really had trouble, but at the same time, like it's just inspiration, like to work here and to work there, and then you try like to get things finished, because otherwise you will have a whole lot of things that are
100
happening.
projects on at once, like I usually do. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really good at that too.
Yeah.
But then it feels like you're not getting anything done because it's all like under the earth. It's still like growing, but it's not visible yet.
Yeah, exactly. And it's that waiting period, isn't it? And this is like why I love the nature analogy so much, because I just, when I get stressed about something, I'll just go back to it and think like, okay, where is this coming from? And where is this project coming from as well? What does this project mean to me? Like, what's it going to be? What's it going to become? And then I'll look at like, I got this, I'm going to dig it out. I got this book from one of my friends, and she said she saw it and thought of me. And it's called Plant Words. And it's got 250 words in that it's got like a whole description about. And I know it's the geekiest thing I've ever been given, but I love it. So I'll just like, for example, like the ecosystem thing, I was trying to think of a word to sort of combine everything into what, you know, like my whole process. I was like, I need a name for this. And I think it's so funny because when a sign for me that I'm in flow and that things are working out, or that things are coming together in a more seamless way, they feel like, instead of like fighting it constantly, it just seems to come together really nicely. And for me, that was when I embraced that nature messaging, because now like I used to struggle with naming things so much, but now like I know I've got this book to lean on, but I've also just found that like names just start coming to me no problem. And it's just sort of like it removes that friction of doing things. And I think, yeah, like I'm very much like you in that I have a lot of ideas and a lot of projects on at once and a lot of things I want to get done. And sometimes it can be a case of having to like force myself to sit down and just get on with it and just make sure that I finish it before I got onto something else. But yeah, I think chronic illness has a part with that as well, because I know that there's been so many times where I like chronic illness has just completely derailed my like carefully crafted plans that I love to create. I love to plan. I'm a planner and I love lists, so I'm more than happy to go through and create lists and project plans for every single thing I'm doing, however small it is. But yeah, I think it's just one of those things, isn't it, that sometimes like fighting against all of that can derail you quicker. So yeah, I just try and keep it contained if I can, and try and work on like maybe one or two things, because I tend to get bored if I work on just like one thing at once, particularly if it's a big project.
Yes.
But yeah, trying to find a way of bringing more things to life without derailing each other would be ideal.
And talking about, I think that's a really good point about the chronically illness. Like you're not really able to plan. I think like in the beginning when I started my business, I had so many coaches I was following that would say, oh, make a year plan or even a 3-year plan about when you're doing what and what you're marketing. And then I would get stuck because I would make that plan, sure. But it would never go as I planned it out. Because things would get in the way. Like I would feel worse and I wouldn't be able to do what I want to do because like for who doesn't know, I am chronically ill as well. So Rach and I have that in common. And so like I would have a whole plan and then something would happen. And then even if it would just be a week that I was out, it was also a mind thing because then I felt like, oh, my plan is not working anymore. And then I would just there was a reel a while back, like make a plan and throw out the plan. That was how I felt.
Yeah. Because you feel behind, don't you, as well? Like,
exactly.
so you start to feel behind and think, well, what's the point in carrying on with this project? Because the plan's completely gone kaput and I'm not going to be able to get it finished. And so what's the point? And it's, I think, like you say, it's half the physical battle of not being able to do something when you want to, but then also that mental battle of being so mentally ready to do it, but you can't physically. And it's, finding that space, I guess.
Yeah, and I think now I just say, okay, I have these 3 projects that I'm working on because like you, I need multiple because I need to work on what entices me at that moment. But then like I have the space to hyper focus on whatever I need to hyper focus on. But that's the 3 things I'm working on, and I don't give it a deadline as in that's when it needs to be finished. But that's the things I'm focusing on. So I know those will get further and those will start to grow. Talking plans. And then once one is finished, I can always add another one, or I can focus on the 2 that I still have left, depending on what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one thing I've had to really learn is I used to be the same in that I would plan out my projects and I'd put like a deadline on the end of when I wanted to do it. And so that I've even done that as much like as I did it last year for my branding course that I've been creating for, it feels like months, and it is months, because like I had so many things derail it. Like I had 2 new chronic illness diagnoses in October that I'd been wanting to try and get an answer for some symptoms I'd been having for years. And with everything that happened to the world, everything got delayed. And I only got those in October. And then that was kind of, I think when you've been fighting for answers for so long and then you suddenly, like, you think everything's going to be sorted once you've got the answer. And then suddenly you're given an answer and you're like, oh, that's quite like disconcerting, quite concerning and everything like that. So that was kind of like a mental block and hurdle to kind of get over. And then there's also like chronic illness flare-ups happening in the midst of all of that, and other things happening as well. And I had like an accident in January and injuries because of the kind of illnesses I've got. I very easily hurt my joints and stuff like that. So it's like, it's so easy, isn't it, for even just the day-to-day stuff and the daily grind of living with chronic illness. It's so easy without any extra stuff for things to get derailed and plans to like go haywire. And so what I've personally started doing is I don't put dates on things, but I'm a lot more flexible. Like I don't put a deadline on, but then I'm a lot more flexible with the way that I plan things. So I like I said, I love to plan. So all of my offers and projects and everything I'm working on get broken down into milestones. And what I found was that obviously it was just the mental toll that it was taking, I think, of when something went wrong or something happened that pushed stuff back, I'd have to go through every single task in my list and change the dates. So now I break them down into milestones, and I don't make myself only have like 3 to 5 milestones. I will break it down into each like major kind of chunk of things that needs to get done goes into a milestone. And then what I'll do now is I will only set a date for the milestone that I'm working on. And so what that means is if I do have to rejig the dates, I'll only ever have to do it for like a few things at once. And I also just, if I think something will take me an hour, I give myself 3. Because I know there's that whole thing, isn't there, of whatever time you give yourself, you will fill. But for me, I'm kind of like, I overestimate what I can get done in a day anyway. But also then if there is something like on a day where I want to work on this thing, but I'm really fatigued and I'm really tired, like it will take me longer. And if I get it done quicker, then I can just move on to the next things in the task list. Like there's no sort of bad way of doing that, I've found. And that's been really helpful because it means that, yes, things have had to move drastically, but I've been able to just go through and just honestly estimate how long it will be. And then I get a real picture of, oh, so I thought I could get this done, just for example, like by the end of March. Actually, it's going to be the end of May, like by the time I get to work on this, and how long it will take me. And then if things get done sooner, they get done sooner. But if not, then you've got more time to plan for, like, I always forget to do the marketing sides of things for my stuff. So I've got more time for marketing, or I've got more time for whatever, or even rest. Like rest is so important and so undervalued.
Oh yeah.
Even by myself, because I'm so bad at it, because I love to just be doing. But yeah, I think having more time built in for rest, and then planning by milestone, and just doing those few dates for a few tasks at a time has just changed everything for me. So
I love that. I think that's such a great way to look at it, because I've fallen into the, oh, I'll do this in January, and then this in February, and then this in March, because I always have a list of projects I want to work on next.
I do. I have an ideas database in Notion.
Exactly. And I used to have that, but then also have it already planned out with months. And I still sometimes do it just to give myself an idea of, is this even remotely possible?
Yeah.
But I don't, like, I just use it as a bit of a planning tool to give myself, okay, but that would be great to do then. And, oh, wait, I should do this before I do that, because sometimes I might otherwise start at like step Z of the whole alphabet.
Yeah.
So it gives you a bit of overview.
Yeah.
But it doesn't give me the push, like a good push, but not a bad push. Like, oh, I really have to push myself to get this done before the end of March, when it's just not going to happen. And then getting flare-ups just because you're getting stressed, and then not being able to make it. So it's kind of like a vicious circle then.
Yeah. And I think as well, I think that's such a clever idea to like use it as a planning tool, because it gives you that choice then, doesn't it? And that's what I think is so important when it comes to chronic illness with business stuff, because we can, we hear the narrative, everybody hears the narrative all the time of like, you need to hustle, you need to push, you need to just keep going. And, we can keep going and keep going. And then as a chronically ill person, like we will just burn out and not be able to do anything for months. Like I've burnt out so badly. I've landed myself in hospital twice, like, in my earlier years in business. And I've burnt out since then, but I was able to sort of control it a little bit more. But the only way I could control it was by not working on anything extra. And so you end up sort of doing and doing and doing, and then in a place where you can't even do anything anymore for a while. And that's not the place you want to be in. Like you want to have that, I hate the word balance, but you want to have that balance where you get to do the things you want to do, but you don't put so much pressure on yourself that you keep doing it and keep doing it so that you burn out.
Yes.
And I think, like you say, using that as a planning tool, it gives you that choice back to be like, do I want to push myself this much to get it done for that? Or is it not worth it for the sake of my like physical health, mental health, or anything else? And then sometimes the answer will be, yeah, let's go for it. And let's just make sure that we plan in more rest, or I won't do this as much, or, whatever else. But it gives you that choice and that opportunity, I think, to find those places where you can do it and want to do it. And then, yeah, just run with it, but carefully.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think that's true. I think that's really, and I think we're not told that enough, that like, I think more and more you're hearing like, oh, rest and taking care of yourself is important as an entrepreneur, but it's even more important if you're chronically ill. And I think it's more important than anyone realizes a lot of times. But I'm very prone to not drink enough water. Well, that's one of the things that I should definitely be doing for me and my body with my chronically illness. So it's it's something that we're not taught, I think. And I think if you give yourself the rest and the space and take care of your mind and your body, then your business can flourish. And if you don't do that, then it's really like, then you're pushing against the grain, and you're just burning yourself out more, and then you're actually getting further away from where you want to go.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree, because I know the first few years of my business, it was more of like a push and constantly just pushing. And that's why I burnt out, I think the first time I really burned out was 3 years into running my business. And then the next time was 5 years, literally 2 years, 2 months to the day after I'd first burned out. And so that just shows, like, I think as well, like branding and running my business from a more aligned place of myself. So for the first few years, I hid about my chronic illness because I'd worked in a terrible job before I started my own business where a lot of things were blamed on me being ill and all of that stuff. So I kind of had this fear of clients thinking that I was going to be less, I don't know, like less conscientious or less hardworking and, all of this stuff because of the fact that I was chronically ill. But that was just like living a double life and was exhausting. And it was only when I sort of embraced talking about my chronic illness and the impacts it had on me. Like I got clients who were chronically ill because they related to what I was saying. And I had, I'm so lucky now that I've got the most incredible clients that I work with who always respect like my chronic illness and just know that like they can tell if I send them a Voxer message whether I'm having like a high fatigue day or not. And so they'll be like, just ease off for now, it's fine. And they're lovely. But that's come through me really starting to feel confident enough in talking about that. And like you say, I think it's not talked about enough. And I think as well that can lead into the comparison side of things of I find that the people I compare myself most to are the people that aren't chronically ill and that have a lot more capacity in their day to get things done. And so, yeah, I think it's so easy to do, but to hear other people talking about chronic illness in business, I think is just going to be so important for others to hear with it because there's so much that we can do, but it's all about being like really, I don't want to say the word clever because that doesn't feel quite right, but it's like being really conscious of what your limits are, because I hate that word, but the reality is that there are very real limits on how much we can do before we trigger a flare or different things happen or trigger some symptoms to start. And so I think it's just being aware of what those limits are and not letting them limit you, but letting them actually, like you said, allow you to flourish and go more in the direction you want to go than the opposite way. Because if you just push against those limits all the time, you're just going to be more tired, to be quite frank.
You're going to end up in the ER.
You're going to end up in the ER, you're going to end up admitted to hospital overnight, and it's going to be awful, quite frankly. And then you're going to have weeks of feeling terrible because you're exhausted and in pain more, but then also you're not getting on with the things that you want to be doing because you're too tired. And so I think, yeah, that was such a valid point about letting those limits kind of propel you and let you flourish and actually embracing those rather than pushing against them constantly and beating yourself up for it, because at the end of the day, like, we have one life, we have one body, and it's doing the best it can. And sometimes it might not quite work like the way we want it to. I always sign off, like whenever I say like I'm crossing my fingers for somebody and I'm hoping that they're okay, I always say like I'm crossing my fingers on my wonky joints, because they are wonky, they don't quite work how I want them to, but the wonky joints also seem to bring people a lot of luck. Do you know what I mean? So it's just embracing it and making it more fun. And yeah, chronic illness can be horrible and very serious and not a fun thing to think about or chat about. But I think the more that we can embrace it and love it, I think the more that our businesses, like you said, can only flourish from it. So,
and I think even like people that don't have any chronic illness or disabilities can learn from the mindset of taking care of yourself first. I think that's something we all should do more, and I think that's when you can like that's when that tree can grow and like the business can become also more you, because if you take care of you and you know who you are and what you need, like it's the manure in the soil. Like you need to have you.
Exactly.
Like you need to give it the right fuel and the right food to be able to grow. And you need the extra bits and the extra power to go and where you want to go. And that's also like, because you touched on that a little bit, like the place to go is not the same for everyone. Like the goal is not the same for everyone. And I think that's something that we should all keep in mind as well. Like you have to want to know what you want to do and where you want to go to and where you want to grow to.
Exactly. No, 100%. And that's a huge part of like my branding process is the thing I've always said to my clients is like, you have to know what you want for you. Like, you can't outsource like your answers to other people because only you know what you really want. And I think as well, like when we really focus on what we want above anything else and focus on who we are at our cores, like that's where things like the values led approach to branding that I have comes in, because I feel like when you know who you are and you're sure in that, like all other decisions can become so much easier because you know what you stand for, you know what you stand against, you know who you want to serve and who you want to sort of help. And I think everything else can just fall into place from that. And it just feels like more, I don't know, the more that you sort of settle into who you are, the more I feel like confident you can appear. And even not just appear, but like how you can make decisions more confidently and how you can decide where you want to go and come up with your offers and the projects you want to work on. Everything, just like every little bit of your business starts at those roots of who you are and what you believe in and what you want your work to accomplish. And I think when you can focus on those roots and nurturing them, like you said, with the manure of everything else and giving it the fuel and power that it needs, like when you can do that, that's when you can start to grow with much more intention and much more alignment with both who you are but also who you want to be, and you sort of get a better pathway to sort of getting there.
Yeah. And that works also for your marketing because you said like
Yeah.
you're not great with marketing, but if you
Yeah.
know who you are and what you stand for, it's so much easier to write. And I
Yeah.
think it's also when you make better content because it's more you and it's
Yeah.
more unique. And I was actually talking to one of my creative marketing puzzle people the other day that like I was saying like this was content. We were talking about a post I posted a while back that I wouldn't have like dared posting until recently because I'm okay with being more outspoken and more, hey, this is who I am, because it's more getting ingrained in, hey, this is who I am. And
Yeah.
then you can actually like show that to the world. Well, if you're not sure and you're um, not in a space where you feel okay with that, then it's harder to show that as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as well, like when we say about marketing as well, it for me, I always struggle to dedicate the time to my marketing. I know what I should do. I've advised clients on it for God knows how many years, but I'm always terrible at dedicating the time myself. And so I challenged myself a few months ago to email my newsletter community weekly, like no matter what. That was my one non-negotiable of the week. And it was really funny when you were saying about how like when it comes to doing your marketing, like everything becomes easier to write about and everything else. And it's been so funny because for the first time in literally my whole business life, I've not run out of ideas and I've been able to write that email every single week without fail. Like I've done it for something like 4 months, I want to say, without missing one. And that's huge for me because I've always gone like maybe a few weeks and then I'd miss a couple, or do you know what I mean? And this
Yeah.
is like without fail. And it's all because I just went all in on this messaging and talking about seasons. Like, who else is talking about seasons when it comes to business? Like, there are a few people starting to, but it was one of those things that I just sort of, the way that I was approaching it was completely different to how I had done before. And just giving myself permission to go with what I believed in and really talking about that. And I think, like you say, that only comes when you feel more confident in who you are and what you're doing. And for me, that's been a whole process the last couple of years. But yeah, it feels like it's finally coming together. And I think as well, like you end up having more, just more ideas that feel different and feel fun. And, you know, for me, that's been a way I've been sort of expressing myself with my courses and with my digital products, like creating fun little things that can be really impactful but really tiny as well, and just giving yourself permission to do things the way that you want to do it. And just not, I think for me it's been about tuning out everybody that says the ways you should do something, and I keep trying to make sure I don't use the word should, so if I've done it today I apologize to everyone. But it's one of those like habits to unlearn, isn't it, of everybody says this is the way you should do something, and I'm naturally very much a questioner of that sort of thing. So, and I always have been, like, if someone tells me this is how you should do something, I've always been like, but why? Like, I'm not trying to be difficult, I just want to know why I should do it that way. And I think the more that you can become comfortable with your own sense of self and what that looks like in business, you know, the easier it is to decide what kind of marketing you want to do. So just because everyone says video is the thing and the thing you should be doing, it doesn't mean that you have to do that if that's not what feels right to you, because it will never come across authentically or come across kind of as that real representation of you and who you are if you are hating it every single second. Like, it's all about, I think there's ways to challenge yourself and push yourself out of your comfort zone, which I think we kind of, this is the one should, like, I think that is a should we can all do, because it's going to stretch us and help us grow in good ways. But then when it comes to actually doing things that you really, really, really don't like doing, there's no point in doing that as a marketing effort, because it's never going to connect with the people you want it to connect with. Because it's, you know, people get a feeling, don't you? Like, if something doesn't feel quite right, you can feel that awkwardness and you can feel that from them. And like, you sort of feel for the person, because you're like, why are you forcing yourself to do that?
It's a bit double, but because I agree, like if there's things that you hate, then like I always tell like people, like if there's channels that you hate to do, don't do them. Like, but at
No,
the same time,
exactly.
you will feel uncomfortable. Like if we're talking video, gosh, I am still not really comfortable doing videos. I do them, and I do them every 2 weeks. So you know, it's still uncomfortable. And if you look, like if I look back at my first few videos, I'm looking at them like, ah, poor thing. Because like I look like I'm uncomfortable. Like I
Yeah,
am, and it's just showing. So it is double, because you I want to make sure that people don't think, oh, I look uncomfortable, or I don't feel great on video yet, so I'm not doing it. But it's not a hate, but it's more I
yeah,
have to learn how to do it, and I have to learn to feel myself on video,
yeah,
because that's definitely a learning thing. And after
yeah,
a year of making videos and 7 months of vlogging, I can still say that it's not great to be on video. So I don't think it will, maybe it will never pass, but it does become easier. You become more yourself, and you
yeah,
become, yeah, more your unique and authentic self. And that shows, and I can see that in my videos. So it is a bit of a balancing act, because you want to make sure that you do
yeah,
things that you like and that fit you, but it might not be comfortable. And so I want to make sure that people who go on video the first time and think, oh, I really didn't like that,
yeah.
don't say, okay, I hate it, and then
No,
don't do it
exactly.
anymore.
Yeah, and I think as well, like I always say to people, it's always about, does it feel good at the end of it? Like, even if it's been uncomfortable and you're like, I really don't like the way I come across, I didn't say this quite right, I didn't look quite right at the camera or whatever, you know, if we're talking about video. But if at the end of the day it's something that you've enjoyed part of the process of, that's very different than, I really don't like this and I'm feeling so, like, you feel so constricted by it and it's something that you feel like you should be doing but you really aren't
Mm-hmm.
enjoying any part of that process. Like, for me, I when I was studying, I did a HND, which is like the first couple of years of a degree, and I was doing it in interactive media, and I absolutely hated doing the audio editing and video editing modules. Like, every other module I passed with flying colors. That one I just got a basic pass on, because I was like, you could tell I didn't enjoy it. Like, the end results weren't good. I wasn't enjoying the process. And it was something like a story I carried with me for so long. And then I just started using another app recently, because I had to edit the course videos for my course. And I was like, I've got to do this. Oh, I really don't want to. I always try to do them in one take wherever possible. But this one, with all of my chronic illness stuff, I was like, I knew I need to edit them. But I gave myself the chance to go through and edit them, and I started to really enjoy the process. And so I think it's all about discerning between, is this something that is stretching me and that is feeling a little bit uncomfortable and is a little bit challenging, but at the end of the day I'm either really happy with the result, or I might not be fully happy with it, but I've enjoyed this and I can see myself wanting to learn how to be better at it, than feeling like it's something that you just want to like run and hide kind of thing, and you just feel like, oh my god, why am I doing this? It's awful. I feel like for me, the idea of doing like videos like you do every couple of weeks, I love being interviewed, I love chatting with people, but doing something on my own, no thank you. Interviewing other people, I am terrible at, and it's a skill I've tried to hone over the years. I'm just not good at it. I'm just really not. And so I think it's just about figuring out, like you said, there is a difference between you might not feel comfortable, but it's something you enjoy, versus like you really don't feel uncomfortable, like you really do feel uncomfortable, but you also hate every part of that process. And I
Yeah.
think that's where, of course, keep going, and you might still take time, like with that learning curve, it might still take time to improve or get to the level you want it to get to. But it's always, I just commend everybody that tries something and keeps going and keeps trying, because I just think it's such an important thing to keep stretching yourself, to keep challenging yourself and enjoying what you're doing at the end of the day. And marketing your businesses can be so hard, and figuring out the ways that you want to show up and the way that connects with your audience as well and the people you want to reach. It can be so hard, and sometimes it can feel like you're shouting into a void. We've been there, haven't we, many times? But at the end of the day, I think it's just keeping going and keep trying. So
Well, on that note, I think it's high time we quit because I just saw the time.
oh gosh.
Thank you so much, Rach. This was a fabulous chat. Thank you for this.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I've loved it, honestly.
No, I loved having you too.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
So that was Rachel, or Rachilli. We had such a lovely chat. If you want to know more about her, I have links in the descriptions and you can go and check her out. If you want more videos like this, more of these fabulous creative chats, go check out this link over here. You will find all of them in that list. And I will see you somewhere in those videos. Bye.